I assume everyone watching this video has already completed all chapters. I'll extract parts of the chapter 6 animation that strongly connect to chapter 5. This way it's easier to follow the character relationships. The remaining parts of chapter 6 will be discussed at the end, as many of them seem related to DLC content maybe. The animation in chapter 5 is likely very confusing for those unfamiliar with the original story, much like the fragmented narrative in the movie Memento. On the other hand, the animation in chapter 6 uses a heavy montage style, throwing iconic moments from Journey to the West, makes players who are familiar with the story very emotional. The relationships in chapter 5 are quite complex as well, with various adaptations from both the game and the TV series. I'll focus on the differences between the game and the original book to avoid confusion with too many versions. To begin, we need to go back to the early time. Wukong began roaming the seas and formed a brotherhood with various figures, calling themselves the Mountain Huagu 7 Sages, those animal companions you see in the animation. Among them, Wukong is Wukong's sworn elder brother. One day, after Wukong had a heavy drink, he was dragged to the underworld and told, "Your lifespan has reached its end, and we are here to take you away." Wukong then defeated the king of the underworld's subordinates, demanded a brush, and forcibly crossed out his name, along with the names of his fellow monkeys from Mountain Huagu. The king of the underworld then reported this to the Celestial Court. At the same time, the Dragon King of the East Sea, since Wukong had robbed the Dragon Palace of its treasures, all the armors and the Jingubang you got are from the Dragon Palace, so Dragon King also filed a complaint with the Celestial Court. Then, since the Celestial Court hadn't yet fully understood Wukong's abilities, they tricked him into joining the court as an official. The first time, Wukong found out he was given the lowest ranking position and left in anger. The second time, they deceived him by giving the title he had proclaimed for himself, the Great Sage, equal to heaven, but it was a fabricated position as well, without any real rank or salary. One day, Her Majesty organized the Peach Banquet. You can see this as a reward distribution event for officials, akin to annual bonus. However, Wukong was not invited. Of course, he still held an empty title with no salary. Infuriated, Wukong transformed into one of the invited guests and crashed the banquet, causing chaos. He drank a great deal of the celestial wine, becoming thoroughly drunk. Bajie's portrait mentioned this scene. He saw Wukong and said, "When will I ever get to be as drunk as that monkey?" Afterward, in his drunken state, Wukong stumbled upon Taishang Laojun, the pill-making elder's room, that Taoist elder in chapter 6 animation, and Wukong ate 5 gourds of his celestial pills. Naturally, the Celestial Court couldn't tolerate this anymore and sent an army of 100,000 heavenly soldiers, including Li, the pagoda bearer, and Ne Zha to subdue him. Wukong used a pluck of many defeated them. Eventually, the Celestial Court called on Erlang, His Majesty's nephew, to face Wukong. As their battle reached a stalemate, Taishang Laojun, the pill-making elder, ambushed Wukong with the Golden Hope, knocking him down, then captured Wukong and threw him into his furnace, intending to transform him into a celestial pill. However, because Wukong had eaten so many celestial pills, his defense and immunity to the 4 bangs were nearly limitless. Taishang Laojun tried to burn him alive in his furnace with a 70 fire, but Wukong still survived, even gives him his iconic fiery eyes golden gaze, a power that allows him to see through the true forms of Yaoguais. Wukong kicked over the furnace during his escape, and a piece of burning coal fell to the mortal realm, creating the area Flaming Mountains. Next comes the chaos Wukong caused in the Celestial Palace. In the original story, Wukong didn't participate in the Celestial Palace rebellion, but the adaptation reaches the character relationships.
Save your strength, brother! We're yet to slay our way to the court and seize that senile emperor!
In the Chapter 6 animation, my personal interpretation is that all 7 sages were involved in the rebellion. The scene showing their crushing defeat is a bit unclear in terms of timeline. It could be either be Wukong and Wukong's attempt to challenge the Celestial Palace again, or perhaps the second time, a few minutes before the game's opening scene. And then His Majesty asked Rulai to help. Wukong urinated on Rulai's middle finger. Rulai then trapped him under Five Fingers Mountain for 500 years. Until Tang Sen, under Guan Yin's guidance, released Wukong from his imprisonment. Then the journey to the west started. The game adaptation has merged some locations, characters, and events from the original story. So to avoid confusion, I'll focus on the game's version to these events. One day, they reached the Flaming Mountains. The intense fire made it impossible for Tang Sen to pass, and Wukong heard that Rakshasa's plantain fan could extinguish the flames. He also discovered that this is Wukong's territory, and Rakshasa is Wukong's wife. Thinking that Wukong is his sworn brother from 500 years ago, this would go smoothly. However, he encountered Wukong's arrogant and cruel son, the Red Boy, who attacked them. Back then, Red Boy pretended to be in distress while hanging from a tree, similar to how you see him disguised as a fox in the game, also hanging there to lure you. The Red Boy had mastered the Samadhi fire as well, maybe because of the burning coal that fell from Taishan Laojun's furnace. Wukong was nearly burned to death during the fight, and it was Bajie who saved him, as you will see in Chapter 6 animation. Bajie also mentions this incident in the New West.
When he couldn't defeat the Red Boy, the anger nearly cost him his life. It was me and my healing touch that saved him.
Now, some might wonder why Red Boy, just a child, could almost kill Wukong when even the flames from Taishan Laojun's furnace couldn't. I have a purely speculative, fun interpretation. Back when Wukong was burning by the Samadhi fire, he had just consumed a lot of celestial pills, which some of those might have acted like temporary boosts, just like the ones you use in the game. Afterward, Red Boy disguised himself as Bodhisattva Guan Yin and captured Bajie, planning to roast and eat him. Wukong eventually sought help from the real Guan Yin, who subdued the Red Boy and took him as her disciple. This brings us to the third golden band, which is even more advanced than previous two. This one can split into 5, wrapping around the head, hands, and feet. It's also worth mentioning that during your boss fight with the Yasha King, he uses a move that covers the ground with the red blades. This is a tribute to the original story, where Guan Yin subdued him using a similar thing called the Thousand Blades Spirit Platform. After them, Wukong and Rakshasa were furious when their son was defeated and taken away by Guan Yin, so naturally they refused to learn the plantain fan to Wukong. This leads into the animation where Wukong reflects on the past as Wukong gathers various forces to confront him and retrieve the plantain fan. Throughout the lines, Wukong was subtly hinting, "I haven't gone all out. Your people are actually safe." When he says it's the only path left for the likes of us, he's referring to the fact that he's wearing the headpiece, and like all Yaoguais, they cannot escape from the Celestial Court's control. However, Wukong was too enraged to understand at that time. This is likely why in the final animation of the chapter, Wukong flashes through various memories. It seems he only understood Wukong's message later on. At that moment, however, things took a turn for the worse. When Bajie said he killed his other wife, the Fox Yaoguai, during the fight, pushing Wukong into a complete rage. As for why Wukong didn't die after being decapitated, this was mentioned in the original story. His head regrew multiple times after being chopped off, because Wukong also mastered the 72 transformations. He likely had at least 72 heads, but even with that, he was no match for the number of deities from the Celestial Court, and in the end he surrendered, converted to Buddhism. It was only after this that Wukong learned that the truth about Red Boy's origins from Rakshasi. Now let's talk about this chapter's key character, Red Rock and Roll Boy. He has 6 notable subordinates, which you encountered as the 3 pairs of double bosses in the game. Their names in Chinese follow a pattern of symmetrical or complementary meanings. Additionally, Red Boy has 5 element cards. The 5 elements represent metal, wood, water, fire, and earth, which are foundational concepts in ancient Chinese philosophy. The last one you defeated is the Rusty Gold card. This brings us to the Pale X Stalwart, who guides you to these cards. He is another character working for the big brother Erlang, and this is the last one in the game. After defeating the last card, Pale X Stalwart points you a cave called Bishui Cave, revealing a secret area. Here you will need to defeat the Bishui Golden-Eyed Beast. In its portrait, it's mentioned how Red Boy, being cunning and deceitful, schemed to have Wukong injured the Bishui Golden-Eyed Beast, and then takes the player back in time, like a dream, to explore Red Boy's origins.
Our master bade this child be born, but he never knew my struggles.
How can we but follow the Master's word? Rakshasi, you know it was he who made you drink from the river of childbearing.
Shut it. You shall never speak of it. The king knows why I had to drink it. But I haven't glimpsed him ever since then. He made it another reason for his absence.
Rakshasi, your husband shirks dishonor this way. He granted you this cave with his Mount Bishui beast as its sentinel. He's compromised enough for the sake of our master.
You will seal your lips on this. Our family would be doomed if anyone knew the truth behind this child.
Fear not. Master bids me aid you in secret. You and the bull, you will rear this child to manhood. And when the boy comes of age, well, on that day, he will be living proof of the dark deeds of Mount Lingshan.
In the original story, Wukong doesn't have a daughter, and Red Boy's origins is ambiguous. There have been many different interpretations throughout history, but we will focus on the game's version. I think the adaptation is quite good, making the relationships more dark and fitting the black myth tone. In the game, Rakshasi was forced to drink from the river of childbearing to conceive Red Boy. It's like punishment because Wukong once aided Wukong's rebellion against the Celestial Court, so they used Wukong's wife as a tool in their political schemes. It's worth mentioning that Journey to the West is a novel that blends Taoism, Buddhism, and Confucianism, with hidden themes about the political power struggle between the Taoist and Buddhist factions. In this story, the Celestial Court, as a centralized authority, operates with methods that mirror the political tactics of Confucianism. In Rakshasi's portrait, we also learn about the ruthless nature of Taishang Laojun from the Tushta Palace. He coldly states, "I ordered you to raise a child, but I didn't ask you to be a true mother. Let the boy stir his trouble. As long as you and your husband stay out of it, you will be safe." From the dialogue in Bishui Cave and the Yasha King's portrait, we can piece together that this was all part of Taishang Laojun's scheme. The Yasha race was wiped out by Lingshan, which refers to Buddhist faction, and Taishang Laojun secretly preserved the soul of Yasha King's son, using Rakshasi as a surrogate to give birth to him. Taishang Laojun kept this enemy of the Buddhist side as a pawn in his game. Red Boy's portrait also mentions a dream in which he saw monks as tall as mountains, an allusion to the Buddhist extermination of the Yasha race.
He is the last of the Yaksha's bloodline in the West, with an origin most tragic and twisted. Now, he poses a threat no more. Should you grant him mercy, I, Rakshasi, and the Bull King shall retreat ourselves to secluded meditation. Along with our children, we will never leave the mountain again. He is our son. We will bear his punishment. If it pleases you, my plantain fan is also yours to take.
Flames have paved my way. Through flames, I shan't stray. Vain was my flame, for revenge destined to stray. That light lies in our submission, kneeling and begging. You shall never witness it.
In Red Boy's final moments before his suicide, the Chinese stab had him said, "I refuse to let any of you win," referring to multiple factions. He didn't want to become a pawn in the power struggle between Buddhism and Taoism and the court. Rakshasi's fate is very tragic as well. She's constantly used, hurt, and seeking help, but never truly receiving any. Now let's talk about the rest of the ending animation that we haven't covered yet. Specifically, Wukong's defeat by the 5 Yaoguai kings. Wu King's memory seems closer to the truth, as it differs somewhat from that old monk king said. We will discuss Old Monkey at the end of chapter 6. Let's focus on the 5 Yaoguai kings first. These are all the Yaoguai kings that Wukong couldn't defeat during the Journey to the West timeline. It's clear that the Celestial Court quietly permitted these factions to operate. The most puzzling case is Yellow Brow, who was already holding Bodhisattva Mile's sack and weapon, indicating just how much this Buddha of the future was suppressed by various forces. As for why in chapter 4, we mentioned Her Majesty allowed 100-eyed to do so many bad things. It's because 4 of the relics were already under Buddhist control, and she only have 100-eyed. Wukong's comment to Wukong about he always making the wrong choices refers to 3 times. The first time Wukong supported Wukong against the Celestial Court, which led to his family being used as pawns. The second time Wukong resisted the Celestial Court's mission to retrieve the scriptures, which once again harmed his family. And the third time, Wukong participated in the Celestial Court's efforts to capture Wukong, and Wukong knew that his relic would bring Wukong harm. In his final words, Wukong warned Wukong not to use the relic, and this time Wukong finally understood. All his memory flashed back piece by piece. His portrait describes how he would sometimes transform back into his original form, which is a giant white bull, which you saw in the game, and vomiting. He didn't dare to use Wukong's relic, keeping it in his stomach, which caused him great physical strain. And this chapter's relic is a dual-headed pig. Looks quite strange. It's based on an ancient Chinese mythical beast called Bingfeng. My personal interpretation is that this is symbolized being stuck in dilemma, like Catch-22. This beast has a pig's head at both ways, meaning moving forward is the same as moving backward. It represents Wukong's helpless in his situation. If he didn't participate in the Celestial Court's plan, he would be targeted. But by participating in it, he will harm his sworn brother. It also reflects Wukong's duality over the years, sometimes serving the higher above and other times fighting against them. The BGM during fighting the Yaksha King has a Chinese title, 有金处有火. Where there is scripture, there is fire, which is referenced in original book and TV adaptation. The next line is 进退两难, stuck between a rock and a hard place. This phrase applies to both Wukong and Wukong as they find themselves in difficult situations with no easy choices. Both the chapter's name and the ending song are titled 不由己, it's not up to me, symbolizing how they are trapped by circumstances. Now we begin the final chapter. We have already touched on many of the connections to chapter 4 and 5, so I won't repeat those parts here. In terms of gameplay, chapter 6 doesn't have too much content, and the character relationships aren't as complex. The central figure is Erlang, though it's hard to say he truly belongs to chapter 6, as his related scenes are scattered across multiple chapters. However, his influence on the ending of chapter 6 is significant. By now, I'm sure many of you have seen various interpretations, so I won't go too deep about him. And what makes the game's storyline so well crafted is the subtlety with which Erlang's role is presented, leaving space for players to interpret his character and motives on their own.
He had no choice, and neither did I.
And by now, you've all likely reached the hidden ending. I'll just briefly highlight the key points. In Erlang's portrait, it's mentioned that he secretly hid one of Wukong's relic, Yi, free mind, and even killed 2 celestial soldiers who saw him do it, keeping it as his secret. This free mind relic in the game feels a bit like Wukong's memory and mind. My interpretation is that this relic works similar to the one in Cyberpunk 2077. After defeating Erlang, it's as if you inherit Silver Hand's memory, but whether the Destined One inherits Wukong's body or Wukong inherits yours, it's up to the players to interpret. Personally, I believe the 2 minds merged. You are both Wukong and the Destined One. You are the Destined One with Wukong's memories, and Wukong with the Destined One's memories as well. If you skip defeating Erlang and go straight to the Great Sage's broken shell, it's like choosing the devil ending in 2077. You have essentially chosen to cooperate with a company, which is obviously a bad ending. Some interpretations suggest that in this bad ending, you become the next Great Sage's broken shell, and the circle repeats with the next Destined One. I personally don't agree with this one, because it feels too repetitive, and everything you experienced is nothing and reset. That would be a gameplay mechanic translated into the story, so I don't think it's the case. I believe the Great Sage's broken shell is part of the 6th relic, representing the physical aspect, with a data portion was hidden in Erlang's third eye. It's like a USB disk something. He needed to keep the physical form of the relic, or else he couldn't explain its absence to the Celestial Court, because splitting into 6 parts is a well-known thing in the story setting, so he must kept something there. And the Great Sage's broken shell holds the martial arts, and like holding that part of memories. That's why he doesn't speak much. The fight with him is both fun and emotional for many Chinese players. We cry and laugh and so happy and so sad. For example, he cheekily asks for a sip from your gourd. He behaves like a mentor with no temper, subtly teaching you. He hints that using pillar stance is a mistake when your enemy is already watching you. After knocking you down with a flurry of punches, he even kicks your weapon back and encourages you to continue the fight. In the end, I think the shell is simply tired. He feels that he has taught you all the essential points you need to learn. Maybe you haven't mastered the moves he got yet, but you remember them and you just need to practice more. And as he listens to his favorite song and takes a final sip from your celestial wine, he thanks you for accompanying him on his last journey. But what's Wukong's motivation in the game this time? Bajie gives us a clue in the New West when he tells you they had a drink by then. I believe this happened shortly before the opening scene of the game. In Great Sage's broken shell portrait, this is also mentioned. In the Chinese version, Wukong's final line is 长生不老长不了, which I would translate as immortality has no sustainability. Their composition reflects Wukong's entire journey from the rebellious Monkey King to the victorious fighting Buddha. He had seen too much. Many Yaoguais are actually like protected by powerful masters, causing harm and still being taken back. The political struggles between the Celestial Court factions are deeply corrupt. Wukong understands that immortality has no sustainability at all. This ties back to Chapter 4, where His Majesty allowed the Webbed Hollows celestial peel production, because there are only few ways for deities to become immortal. The known methods include celestial peaches, which takes thousands of years to grow, or the Ginjin fruit. You can see that in Chapter 6 animation, but uses Yaoguais making peels have become the most scalable and controllable production method, though it's a disgusting process. That's why in the opening scene, Wukong says, "Haven't all realms and beings been ruled by immortality?" Wukong decided to resist, but he knew how high above's doing their business. He wasn't even sure if the headpiece on his head was truly gone, so he returned to Mountain Huaguo and refusing orders. His fellow monkeys were slaughtered as a result, which led to the confrontation with Erlang. I don't believe Wukong and Erlang had planned this out in advance. Their conversation is filled with hints and implications, and their relationship in the original story is complex as well, with a sense of mutual respect, like heroes admiring each other's strength. That's why after you defeat Erlang, he said that his inner conflict has been resolved. I think neither of them had a specific plan to collaborate, as Wukong wouldn't sacrifice his fellow monkeys in some elaborate scheme. He didn't want to implicate any of his true friends either, so before taking action, he shared his thoughts over drinks with his closest companions, like Bajie, but didn't ask them to abandon everything they own, join him. This is why Bajie spends so much on searching for him afterward. Now I'd like to show a clip of Bajie's memory of Wukong pretending to be angry with him at Mountain Huaguo.
Where do you come from, outsider? In my realm, all monkeys are of similar face and shape. Your face speaks of a different breed, and an ugly one. You must be a Yaoguai from another land.
And about the old monkey. Although the opening scene features the old monkey telling the story to Destined One, as Bajie also mentions in Chinese dub, you shouldn't take everything the old monkey says. Let's have a look. What's the soak in his gourd? It's a Chinese idiom, 葫芦里卖了什么药, which means to say what someone's real motivations are, and it directly connects to the gourd and the soaks in gameplay part as a Easter egg. I personally believe that this old monkey isn't a good guy. From his appearance in the ending, it's clear that he's someone from a Buddhist faction. Earlier, he dressed like a poor common folk to blend in, but at the end, he's wearing custom-made high-end robes, showing his true form. The Red Boy from Chapter 5 was also sent by the Buddhist faction. They definitely knew about the Red Boy's origins, and if he defeated the Destined One, Guan Yin still had the most advanced golden hopes to control him, so they weren't worried. This also explains why characters like Red Boy and Black Bear Guai appear to have no headpieces, just like Wukong. My guess the headpieces are still there, but since they are now against the Destined One, so there's no need to use it. If the Red Boy was defeated by the Destined One, the Buddhist faction would have conveniently removed the thorn in their side, one of Taishong Laojun from Taoist factions. In both endings, he always intends to put that headpiece back on your head. I wouldn't be surprised that he's the first boss in the DLC. I also have another theory. The old monkey in the opening scene and the one in the ending may not even be the same one. After all, their outfits are completely different. Perhaps the original old monkey was taken away by Buddhist faction. The old monkey in the opening scene encourages the destined one, and I doubt they would invest so much into a fake narrative. On the other hand, the old monkey in the ending constantly criticizes Wukong, making it seem like Wukong brought all his misfortunes upon himself. It's like he's trying to make you believe that everything was Wukong's own fault. Let's talk about another important character in Chapter 6, the Mandarin Chief. This character is tied to a hidden questline called 5 Skandhas, a concept from Buddhism, which I won't go too deep here. In her portrait, it's revealed that she was the one who discovered Wukong's birth. I see her as almost a motherly figure to Wukong. She didn't teach Wukong any powerful spells, but she guided him as he grew up, even sending him overseas to seek his first master, Master Budi. After Wukong was turned back into stone, she learned in a dream that gathering the essence of the 5 Skandhas might be able to awaken the stone again. This is why you encountered her several times throughout the earlier chapters. She always was looking for the Skandhas, and you kept taking them away from her. And it's only in Chapter 6 that you finally meet her directly. She sees you dressed like Wukong, and as the lyrics of the Headless Monks say, you look like the stone monkey, but you are not him. Players might easily misunderstand her and as just another Yao Guai trying to steal from you, thinking she fled because she was afraid she couldn't beat you. However, I think her feelings are more conflicted. She was deeply hesitant. If she gave you the Skandha, she would lose her chance to bring Wukong back. On one hand, giving it to you felt like she was finding the inner peace, just let it go. On the other hand, you really looked like and dressed like Wukong, that she felt a sense of happiness as if her dream of reviving him had already come true. There's another small Easter egg I'd like to talk about. The mantis Yao Guai you fight to obtain the arm guard is a hidden reference to a Chinese idiom, 螳臂挡车, which describes the futile attempt of mantis trying to stop a moving cart with its arms. It highlights the idea of powerlessness when trying to prevent something inevitable. This idiom subtly calls back to the theme of fate, hinting that no matter how hard one struggles, they can't escape their destiny. One more scene from the ending animation worth mentioning is when Tang Song and his disciples have completed their journey to fetch the scriptures. On their way back, being flown by the deities, Guan Yin suddenly realizes that they have only faced 80 calamities instead of the intended 81. So they stopped the escort and then let them fall into the water, and the scriptures get soaked and partially destroyed. This scene perfectly highlights how absurd and spiteful the high aboves can be. And regarding to the parts of the animation that I haven't mentioned, those scenes are all from the original Journey to the West timeline. I guess these are foreshadowing content for the upcoming DLCs, so I won't go into details about them and to avoid any spoilers. One of the funniest Easter eggs, the reason why many Western players choose not to use the English dub is about the voice acting accents. There's a funny meme on the Chinese internet that says Shanxi province map looks exactly like UK, and it really does. The headless monk's Chinese accent and the banjo rap thing is in northern Shanxi, which is why they purposely used a Scottish accent in the English dub. The title of this chapter is Unfinished, while the Chinese title Wei Jing carries multiple layers of meaning. Beyond the literal translation unfinished, it seems the developers are saying that the story is far from end. It also feels like a subtle apology for the game's performance or any imperfections, acknowledging that their work is not yet complete. Additionally, it reflects the idea that the characters in the story are pursuing something that may never truly have any end. Lastly, it hints the feeling of wanting more. The game is so addictive that even after finishing, you are left craving more content. When it comes to the TV adaptation, I know a lot of Chinese people say it's not dark enough and call it a white myth. But I think many of them only remember how they felt watching as a kid, before experiencing the complexities and darker sides of the society. I recently rewatched it, and honestly, it's very faithful to the original novel, with minimal changes. It wasn't turned into some white myth at all. The original story doesn't explicitly spell out its darkness. The TV adaptation simply lacks the gory visuals we see in more modern films. After all, you cannot expect a series from 50 years ago on TV to be something like the movie Joker from recent years.
北风凛冽，哈哈哈，大声前。